Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to JLI's Meditation from Sinai, Lesson 3. Mastermind, the benefit of divine closeness. Let me remind you all what we've been talking about. We're talking about the special, distinct Jewish brand and tradition of meditation, which developed thousands of years ago, since the time of Moses on Mount Sinai itself. And to this day, although the world is very well oriented with many different Eastern style and ways of meditating, many of us don't realize that we have a distinct, unique, very important Jewish tradition. That's what we're here to discuss. 2 weeks ago, we spoke about the power of redirecting our thoughts and the effect that has not only on our mood, not only on our feelings, but how we can actually change reality itself. Everyone remember that?
No.
Those that are on Zoom, can you hear us? Well?
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. Good to hear. I'm going to hit mute all, and you're going to unmute if you have any important questions or comments. Last week, we took it a step further. We said that a human being has two components, comprised of two forces, two voices, two consciousness. We have the voice of the body, we have the voice of the soul, or the spirit, and we discussed how the default settings are more to hear the body's cries, to hear the body's needs, and it takes concentration, meditation, and contemplation to realize the true value and the important contribution the soul has to our conversation and to our reality. We said that upon realizing that and becoming in tune with our own body-soul dynamic and realizing the spirit, the soul, can many times tap true purpose, the true identity, because we said that it is the soul which informs and molds the body, brings the body into being, if you will. Well, then, same thing is with how we perceive reality itself. We have the superficial, basic story, then we have the spirit of the event. And if you recall, we spoke about the picture, the piece of art, being a series of brush strokes, but in truth, being a beautiful, deep, rich conversation or story. We spoke about how sometimes we sit, we go out to dinner with somebody, and the snapshot, the body of it would be two mammals putting food in their mouths, two primates shoving their mouths with food. If you look at it, you think about it, really, there's something very deep, meaningful, a bond of two human beings, their friendship, right? And so that was the crux of last week's discussion. We said, how does a person reorient how they see the world, how they see reality? So we said there's a unique or two unique forms of meditation. In Hebrew, one was called hitbodedut, and one was called hitbonenut. And yes, folks, we have some new technology, and I'm still learning on the job. So thank you all for working with us. So we have hitbonenut, which is, I want you to see the text. Hitbonenut, which was a contemplative meditation. And there was also another hitbodedut, which we described as, what was the word we used? Who remembers the word we used last week? Well, I'll tell you, we said that one technique is to dim all the sound that distracts, to dim the voice of the body, the voice of the world that tries to take away our focus from matters of the spirit. But the other technique, which we called hitbonenut, contemplative meditation, is to turn up the volume of the soul. That's what we spoke about last week towards the end of our lesson. The word hitbonenut, which means contemplative meditation, has two Hebrew words that inform that word. And you can see them on the screen over here, or I'll just look at my screen. Bina, contemplation, and binyan, building, because we have the ability through meditation to build out our new perception, to build out our new concept of reality. Although, of course, we're not building a new concept of reality. The true reality, the soul reality is coming into focus. And so, again, we had hitbodedut, turning down the distractions, and itbonanut, zooming in or turning off the volume. Those were the two primary discussions we spoke about. Then we said like this: a human being is a body and a soul. Well, the universe too has a body and a soul. Just like it is the soul that animates, it's our life. That's what animates us. Well, perhaps we'll see in a moment, our world too is a body and a soul, a body and a spirit. And through meditation, through contemplation, the Jewish tradition is that we can help us come more in tune with our own soul, and the soul, the spirituality, and the true purpose of existence itself. Now let's develop this very idea a little further. Today, what I want to talk about is what we might call, I still have to figure out this bar up here. What we're going to call, folks on Zoom, good to have you. We're just playing around with you, trying to figure out how to see you. We're going to call this divine consciousness meditation. I'm going to claim that today's discussion is going to be the most spiritual and distinctly religious meditation form. You might like that, you might not, but that's what today is. It's a Jewish course, and we're going to talk about different Jewish types of meditation. And along the way, we're going to discover some astonishing truths about ourselves, about our world, and the things we're going to study can impact and influence, if we so desire, how we think, how we feel, and even how we act. We're going to share some very big Jewish ideas. And of course, we are talking about an academic study and survey of Jewish meditation, but we're also going to introduce hopefully some practical ideas that we can actually incorporate into our very life. And so here's what I want to share with you. Today, we're going to continue along with the hitbonanut contemplation style of meditation, but again, divine, what do we call it here? Divine consciousness. It's going to be a meditation that's around divine consciousness. And we're going to divide today's discussion. We're going to divide the type of meditations we talk, or the ideas that we're going to talk about, into 3 steps. We could call it, it's alive, by design, and you matter. In a moment, these will make sense. Right now they don't, but in a moment they don't. So let's dive in. You're going to enjoy this. If you have any questions, folks on Zoom, how are you? Everyone's good? For the first time, we can see you in the class on the screen.
Hello. Hi.
Great to have you on. Can you give me a thumbs up? Everyone's good?
Yes.
Folks in person? Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. They do not see us. They see me. Pretty boring, right? All right. They look good, right? All right, let's do this. We're going to talk about some good stuff. So we said the universe has a soul, just like we do. A body without a soul is dead. Sorry for using such jarring words, but a body without a soul is not alive. Our universe is the same. A universe without a soul doesn't exist. Thankfully, it does have a soul. It exists. But that is the divine energy that emanates and brings our universe into existence. So how do we imagine this cosmic creative energy? Is it like a battery pack? I don't know if you noticed, I dropped my mouse before and the mouse stopped working. I shoved the battery back in and now the mouse works. Is that how it works? Does the world have somewhere a big battery where God plugs in and gives it energy? Kind of like the video we saw last week of the refrigerator. Is that how it works? Anyone? Yes. Sharon says yes, good. Anyone else have it? It's not a right or wrong, but anyone else have a different perspective? So number one, yes. A battery gives the mouse the ability to work. Divine soul of the universe allows the world to tick, but it's a whole lot more than that. And to understand what this is, we're going to go see the words of King David. If you have a textbook, anyone here that was supposed to get a textbook from me and didn't? You have a book, right?
I do.
You left it. That's all right. Welcome. All right, folks, if you have a textbook, good. If not, I'm going to read it for you so we don't get bogged down. Here we go. Midrash Tehillim. This is a special midrashic work based on the Psalms, on the book of Tehillim. And let's listen carefully. I'll read it so you can all hear it. And yeah, I'm still getting the hang of this. Here we go. King David exclaimed, Borchi nafshi et Adonai. My soul blesses God. Why does he feel the need to emphasize that it is his soul that's praising God? He is praising God. What about his soul? Have you ever managed to give your soul an independent voice of your whole being? So why does he talk about his soul? So the Midrash on page 82 says as follows. He told himself, listen carefully, just as the soul fills the body, so does God fill the universe. So King David concluded, let the soul, which possesses the same qualities as God, praise him. Let's think very carefully. What does it mean that the soul fills the body, and that's how God fills the universe? Any ideas? Someone help me out. Okay. Oh, so let's think. When you move, who is giving the command? I know the scientists are gonna, but when you move, who is telling you to move? Your brain. Oh. Of course we do. Oh, so hold on one second. I hear where you're going. Let's slow down. The body is animated according to Jewish mysticism by a soul. I don't think not only Jewish mysticism, but Jewish mysticism describes how all of the different systems of the body are each independently and individually animated by a separate part of the soul. So the soul has the capacity to cause the human body to move, to think, to speak, to see. Now, granted, it is the brain that sends those instructions, but Jewish mysticism understands that a soul animates the entirety of the body. And so imagine the soul is invisible, you cannot see it, but when you see a person interacting, living in a intelligent way, we can understand that there's a soul that is animating the body. Here is what the Midrash says. You know what? Just like the soul has a part that animates each part of the body, well, the universe is the very same way. And so let's just get ahead of ourselves for the purpose of the slides. Point number one we want to make, and we're going to elaborate on, is that God's presence manifests in the world just like a soul fills up the body. So here's what we're trying to say. The soul isn't just a battery pack that plugs into us. The soul animates and activates the entire person. A soul is dynamic, and it is the soul that is alive. Now, unfortunately, we cannot witness a soul minus a body. But Jewish mysticism believes that there is a soul without a body. When a person passes on, what remains is that animation, that consciousness, that identity that is the person. And although the body is no longer alive, that very identity that once animated the body ceases to exist. But today's talk is not about the soul without the body. It's just for us to understand. We're talking about living, but we just want to understand that there really is a soul that gives a person life. If there wasn't so, well, we'll stop there. And this is a big deal, folks. So the world too is full of an animating energy. And just like the soul has a component that is for movement and a component that's for hearing and seeing, well, every single component and aspect of the universe has its own divine soul or animating energy that fills the entire universe. The soul fills the entire body. This energy fills the entire world. It's not just a little energy, but it's a custom animation for the world. And the Midrash is making this point. This is not even the Kabbalah. The Midrash says that this is the point. There's a divine energy, a godly energy that courses through the universe. And this cosmic soul operates similarly to the way we imagine a human soul. Not a battery pack, but a customized, individualized energy, life force for every aspect of the universe. And so as we know, our world is diverse, complex, let's forget about the different solar systems and galaxies. Let's just talk about our universe. There are so many different organisms and species and creatures, and they all are distinct and apart, and yet they all exist. And the Kabbalists say that everything that exists has a godly, soul-like animation, and it flows and courses through the entirety of existence, shaping it, creating it, and infusing it with life. I know, don't take my word for it. Let's take a look, page 83 for those that have a textbook. And now let me just take a fast glance at our dear friends on Zoom. Any thoughts or comments before we continue? People in person, I expect you to just, all right. Let's take a look at text 3 for some elaboration. This is from Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson from a work called Sefer HaMamarim. He says like this, listen carefully. A highly detailed self-awareness of the manner in which our own soul operates within our body will allow us to appreciate that the divine is manifest within every detail of the universe, and that each detail exists and is sustained through divine energy. And this parallel is expressed in the teaching, as my soul fills the body, so does God fill the world. And it expresses in a similar verse, from my flesh I perceive the divine. God didn't have to do it this way, but Judaism understands that God chose to create the human existence to be a microcosm and a mini version of the universe, so that a person who gets to know themselves and their soul mechanics can have a certain kind of appreciation for the spirituality of the universe. Back to our text. Every sensation and experience of the body, even most insignificant, is really the expression of the soul. Similarly, even the smallest detail or phenomenon within the universe is actively directed by God, which is the animating energy that exists and creates and develops the world. When we develop this awareness, we sense not only the divine providence in everything, we could appreciate this. We don't always realize, we don't only note divine providence, but we see actual divinity wherever we turn. We can literally see the divine exposed. So if one has the lenses to perceive that there's a divine energy that's choosing to animate each part of the universe in a precise manner, this will allow us to have not a literal, but a concept of the spirituality and the divine. So this is a pretty big idea. Just like the body and every experience of the body is the soul, well, every detail of the universe is an expression of a soul, a godly energy that infuses and creates it. This is a game changer. Because usually, many people tell me, Rabbi, my understanding of spirituality is, and maybe this is your understanding, God one day woke up, whatever that means, and says, hey, let me create a universe. And so he went and took out his tools and fashioned the universe, and then he sent it into orbit, whatever that means. He sent it on its way, and from then on, the world just exists. I don't want to get deep and philosophical, but the point here is that the Jewish tradition says, no, that's not how it works. God created, and just like a body that once lived is not alive if the soul is no longer animating it, well, the universe too is constantly kept in existence, molded and directed by an emanating divine energy, soul, or we might call it from God. And if a person uses and meditates on this, we become aware that everything in our universe is actually an expression of God's hope and vision and influence of the universe. And so take a look at this brand new screen, which is really exciting. It's cool. It exists. We take it for granted. Well, you know what the Kabbalists tell us? No, this is actually a manifestation of a divine desire for this to exist at this moment. And the same thing for everything about our universe. It's not just that it has a spiritual energy, it is a manifestation, and its existence points to an expression of God. Now, what decides that everything in the world should look different? Why is every species different? And what makes all the colors? Well, we can give the scientific explanation. But why did all those factors come to be to bring everything to the precise way it is, well, that is all a divine creative energy animating and creating that thing. It's a unique form of divine energy. Let me just fill out our slides here. So God's presence is manifested in the world. It fills the world like a soul and is present in every detail. And there is a conscious soul that guides reality. There is a conscious decision by a conscious God who's a lot more conscious, aware, and capable than us. I hope no one's insulted by that assertion. And so this is, and I told you, this is the most religious and big, heavy idea of this course. And let's take a look at text 4 real fast. This is the same text, the next part. The entirety of creation divides into 4 kingdoms. Different, throughout the ages, we have different ways of dividing up our scientific world. The Jewish tradition is comfortable with the following. You have the minerals or the inanimate, vegetables or vegetation, things that grow, animals, and humans. And each of these is subdivided into a myriad of specific species. We examine the world of plants, for example, we encounter a broad spectrum of vegetation, trees, crops, vegetables, grass, herbs. Each category, which is further divided, there's an astonishing variety of trees, each kind, unique, distinguished from the others, tremendous diversity of plants and herbs, etc., etc. And each of them have subspecies, which are countless individual units, each which is similarly unique. Each individual unit possesses a unique life force, divine energy that is tailored for it. Everything that is different has a separate kind of energy to make it just so. That life force is what we call its soul, a spiritual entity that animates it, makes it grow, guides everything that happens to it from the moment it sprouts to the moment it is plucked. Every plant's final fate is within, I know this is surprising that Judaism believes this, every plant's fate is within the jurisdiction of a specific divine providence that determines whether the plant will be harvested for an overt purpose, animal fodder, trampled, etc. Everything in this world has a unique divine energy, and that is its life and its guide. Each blade of grass is unique. It may appear identical to other blades of grass, but a close examination reveals specific features. And so the point here is the distinction is a result of a specific divine energy that God invests into this blade. It is an entirely individualized divine manifestation. So let's say scientists say there are almost 9 million, 8.7. Don't ask me how they got to that. 8.7 different unique species. Scientists also say we haven't discovered like 7 million of them, but I guess we have a lot to explore in this wonderful universe. And each species have individual mutations and and individuals. And the magnitude of the diversity in the universe is beyond, it's enough to make you be absolutely overwhelmed. And we've asserted here, according to Jewish mysticism, that every one of those different components and dynamics and species all have a special godly soul that animates and chooses to place them there and manages their affairs. There's a lot that we need to discuss. I know we're just like, but let's go a little further. Text 5. And then we're going to stop over here. This is from the Medrash. Rabbi Simon says, page 86. Each blade of grass has a spiritual force that strikes it and tells it to grow. So just like we might imagine that we all have individual personalities and character, behaviors that are a result of our character and distinct personality, which comes from our consciousness, our soul. Well, similarly, although not quite as complex, the Medrash asserts that every living creature, even a blade of grass, has its own little department, its own spiritual energy that determines how it's going to grow, how it's going to behave, and what is going to be with it. That's pretty. What was that?
It's not my fault.
What do you mean? We're not talking about determination. Now, let's not confuse all. There's a lot of big important issues here. Right now, we're just talking about the fact that you have a soul. Does that mean that you're predetermined? Your existence is predetermined, but what you do with it is another story. So let's hold on. We'll get there. So we discussed that a person has a soul and there's a divine force. The soul animates the body, and a divine force can animate the world. Pretty mind-blowing. All right. Let's take a look. No, we'll stop here. Any questions or comments? I know this is heavy and we're only in the beginning of this discussion. There's probably a lot that we could challenge or question, but go ahead. Any thoughts you want to share? Sharon, you already said yours. Good. Doctor, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Now? Do you hear me now?
Now we hear you. Now we hear you, doctor.
Okay. Where does the human soul reside, or it has no mass and it's just a force of energy, like energy is equal?
Yeah, the human soul is not a material. It does not have any mass or matter of this world. The Jewish concept is entirely a spiritual or metaphysical existence, to my knowledge. Doctor, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I left in limbo.
The Kabbalists say that the primary space where the soul dwells, if you will, is in the mind and the consciousness, but then it exudes through the entire body through the different systems. The soul is kind of present and there throughout, animating the entirety of the human being. As a matter of fact, the Kabbalists say that even a person that, let's say, is an amputee, God forbid, or has a limb that doesn't work, their soul is whole. So they don't have a damaged soul, whatever that means. And what it means is that in the journey of the soul, in their truest existence after 120, well, then the soul is healthy and whole. And the soul is ultimately not impacted by any kind of malady, illness, or handicap that the body is subject to. And but again, back to our point number one is our world, if it exists, it was decided, it was determined to exist by a creator and by a creative energy. God, if you will, is the soul of the universe. And this is where a little bit of meditation or hitbonenut might come into play. Because what does that mean? Forget the science of it, forget if you like it or not, but accepting the assertion of the Kabbalists that it is so, that there is divine energy coursing throughout our universe. What are the implications of that? What does that mean? Of what? Yeah, so there's an infinite abundance of energy. It also means that all around us, there's this divine creative energy. We don't see it because, as the doctor pointed out, it doesn't have a weight. It's not visible, but it's there creating and animating our universe. Yes.
And it's like a circle that connects heaven and earth. That's an ongoing thing. It's like keeping our soul to work and being reanimated by divine force.
So Karen, who is one of our in-house residents of spirituality, is explaining to us that there's this incredible loop and connection between us, the world we exist, and the creator. And there's this ongoing process where we can kind of tap into this great energy. And so everything in our world is making a statement. You know what that statement is? There is a creator. There's someone or something that chose this item to be in existence. And so we look around, and again, we shouldn't allow ourselves to be overwhelmed. We can have a deep appreciation for the amount of energy, creative force, and intention that exists in our universe. And we could see spirituality or godliness everywhere, because everything is an expression of a creator. And if we could tune into this, and I'm not saying it's so simple or easy, but if we could tune into this, you know what we're tuning into? We're tuning into some fascinating symphony of creation, where there's all these different kinds of energy animating, choosing, determining to bring into existence and to preserve for now and all time these different creatures. The world is alive. The colors, if we could really see this or imagine this, the colors are all of a sudden more sharp, brighter. The sounds are more loud. and life could be more rich. Now you think I'm exaggerating, but I want to share with you a very interesting parable, which I love, and I think you'll like it too. And then, Doctor, I know we need to get back to you.
Well, is it that
Hold on, one
dichotomy?
second. One second. I want to get back. Hold on, I want to get back to it, but first I want to see text 6, if you don't mind. But Doctor, hold the thought and don't forget it. Page 87. This is in an artful way. Text 6, page 87. This is a parable from the famous Baal Shem Tov. Just raise your hands. Have you heard of the Baal Shem Tov? Rabbi Israel ben Elazar, one of the great Jewish mystics of all times, the founder of the Hasidic movement. And he shared the following. Doctor, you're going to love it. And then I want to hear your thoughts. There was once a talented musician who played beautiful, sweet music. All who heard it were mesmerized by the sweet, pleasurable, blissful sounds. People couldn't hold themselves back from dancing to the rafters in sheer ecstasy. You ever heard such music? I haven't, but I'm sure it exists. The closer people drew to the source of the music, the more entranced they became, and the more ecstatic their dance. Just then, a deaf individual comes across the scene, not noticing the musician. He just sees a bunch of people dancing like crazy. And he says, I walked into an insane asylum. I walked into a house of Meshuggah. What could make normal, sane people dance like that all of a sudden on a plain Tuesday? He mutters to himself. If this guy who cannot hear was wise, intelligent, and knowledgeable, he would have deduced they must be dancing to a delightful melody. In fact, contemplating the depth of pleasure they were experiencing, just based on their response, he should have been moved to join them in a delightful dance. The analogy, he says, is obvious. What does that mean? The world is being moved in this rich, beautiful, melodious way. Every creature is an expression of a proactive choice by the divine creator to make our world rich, colorful, and diverse. And just because we don't always pick up the signals, just because we don't always see it or feel it, do they stop to exist? Do they stop to dance? And so the Baal Shem Tov is imagining that every creature doing its thing, every animal acting in nature, and every tree that lives and blows is really a beautiful dance and an expression of a divine creator. Now, we don't see it, we don't feel it. It doesn't mean it's not so. And so this is the Baal Shem Tov's way to help us, or giving an idea for a person who wants to see the world in this light. And just because you don't see it, it doesn't mean it's not so. Maybe we just, for the moment, are deaf, or we don't have our volume turned all the way up. Dr. Moskowitz.
There's a dichotomy here. If the divine force is what leads us, and yet we were given free will. So free will would disanimate the world and the soul, because free will changes the whole dimension.
So you're asking Karen's question. We'll address it more at length in a moment, but I want to tell you my basic way of understanding it. There's a creator who willed this world into existence, and he continues to animate it, including us. And much or all that happens in the world is by his design. But that does not take away our free will to react to every moment and every experience the way we do. So God presents the world. We don't create the world. We're not God. We think we are, but we're not God. We are reacting to a world that God gave us. How we react and what we do at any given moment, that's the essence of our free choice. But that does not deduct or take away from existence. As a matter of fact, even if we would like to, we could not undo or shut off the music, if you will, in the existence. You know, just on a different note, it reminds me, we probably shared this before. You know, you have the Mora in the kindergarten, the teacher in the kindergarten has all the kids in their journals to draw a picture, and she goes around and asks the different kids what they're drawing. And when she gets to little Amy, she says, "Oh, what are you're working so hard. What are you drawing?" So she tells the teacher, "I'm drawing God." So the teacher says, "Hold on, how could you be drawing God? No one knows what God looks like." So yeah, well, they don't know until now, but soon they will. So some things we can't quite draw, but we could perceive if we turn up the volume and erase the static. And so the Baal Shem Tov has this beautiful, very rich imagery of these people that are dancing because they can hear something that we cannot. You know, there's a modern example of this. Are you familiar with the silent disco? Where you can hire, or some places, some bars, nightclubs, they'll give you headphones and you can hear the music, but there's no music in the room. You walk into the room and you see a bunch of crazy people wearing headphones and dancing, but they all hear the same music, but the room is silent. And so probably if the Baal Shem Tov was living in 2021, he wouldn't use the example of the deaf person. He would just say he walked into a room and everyone's listening. And the reality is today anyways, everyone's in their own world listening to music. So just because we don't hear that sound, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so every creature, consciously or not, is vibrating with the divine music, the energy that's telling it to exist. And the lack of seeing it or feeling it doesn't make it not true. And meditation is the way we stick that jack to hear the sound. And meditation is the art of putting on those headphones and tuning in, connecting to the sound that's just connecting to a vibration that's just beyond our perception. Now, you know this, there's certain sounds at certain frequencies that with age you can no longer hear. And so kids in school have this shtick where they make the sound, all the kids can hear it, and the teacher cannot. And I want to tell you something very sad. I was always, well, they say up to 35, you can hear it. And I didn't believe it. And I would always hear it. And recently I went online, you can search for it, and they have these frequencies. And I'm ashamed to admit, my ears can no longer pick up that sound. It's a certain frequency. Google it afterwards, you'll see. So the point is, there are all different energies and sounds and vibrations and even colors that are beyond our perception, beyond our comprehension, but it doesn't make it not so. And so the Baal Shem Tov, and our lesson here is asserting, number one, there's this beautiful divine energy that's pulsing through the universe. We don't always feel it until we plug the, what do you call it? What do you call it when you plug it into the jack? What do you call that? You plug the adapter into the jack, you put the headphones on, and all of a sudden it's a whole new world. It's all around us. We just need to tune in. So number one, if that's so, well, then we're incredibly close to the divine. And when we listen to the music, we'll notice how everything comes from God. And it's also an expression of God. God chose to add that detail to our universe to make it more rich and diverse. Text number 8, and then we'll close out our first unit here, our first point here. Page 90. Anyone has page 90? It is a tremendous achievement to constantly meditate on the fact that we are close to God. This is from the same Baal Shem Tov who told the story of the crazy dancers. We are literally and entirely encompassed by God's presence. We should try to remain connected to this reality to the extent that reflection becomes unnecessary because we mentally envision God everywhere constantly. And so this is a several hundred-year-old meditative practice to constantly remind oneself of the creative energy around. At that point, we see that God is the place of the world. He pre-exists all existence, and all existence exists within God, and this includes all of us. With this meditation, we fulfill the directive recorded in the Code of Jewish Law to set God before us at all times. The Baal Shem Tov describes how, again, whether it's a sound we can't hear until we zoom into it, or it's a sight or a color we cannot see, but there are lenses that if we just put them on, we can see. Has anyone seen, let me see if I can stop the share. Hold on one second. Has anyone, no, that's not what I wanted to do. A lot of videos here. Here. Folks, can you see this?
Yes.
You know what this is? These are people who are color-oriented.
Your hair.
You guys are living in an acid trip.
Oh, our hose is green? Yeah. What? It's so green. Hi.
Are you seeing colors? Yeah, completely different. Oh, that is wicked.
What color is this?
That's pink.
What about that? That's
Purple.
what purple looks like. I'm gonna have to learn colors now.
That's what everybody else said.
Out of curiosity, is anyone here colorblind by any chance? Incredible. Thank you for sharing that.
A little too much information. I have a girlfriend of mine, I don't know why, she always spoke with me about it harshly, like it was something I told her, not openly harshly, but she would like analyze me about it, and I would say, well, I can't do anything about this. I don't know how it's germane at all to our class, but except that everyone's giving me a little bit of therapy session here. So thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you, Ira. So the point is, we have people with us that for whatever reason, not by their choice, I think we can all agree, totally not by their choice, by their creator's choice, were born with the ability to have limited range of color. And some people that have that have it more than compensate with sound and other talents and abilities. So, you know, there's certainly a balance that, you know, that everyone has. But the point here is there's such a thing as color. And there are certain colors, I think there's different degrees of color blindness, that if you don't have the ability to see it, you simply cannot. And so meditation is an art wherein we can reclaim some of our ability to see, because Ira, the difference between color blindness and meditation is that with meditation, we can come to have a perception that we otherwise would not have, whereas color blindness, I guess you could try to get these glasses. That would be cool. Just don't put them, let us record. Let us record the first. So there we have it. Meditation allows us to see that which can't be seen and to feel God's closeness. And so, for example, and I'm still struggling with this. So you have the uniqueness of creation. I'm going back in time. Just I want to recap with the slides because they're pretty. You have a species and you have all the different characteristics and all of their fate. Everything about the diversity in this universe, the Baal Shem Tov asserts, is a result of a conscious decision made by a creator, by a soul. And just because we can't hear it at the moment, should we cease to dance? Or should they cease to dance? And so here we have a very important point. Through meditating on God's presence, we can see that which is unseen, but all around us, we can feel his closeness. And this isn't it an incredible picture? And this is the first point I wanted to make today about this very religious Jewish meditation to feel the vitality, the energy, and the creative divinity that exists in our world. And we think about, and so what is the meditation in short? Really coming to feel the way our body and its different systems and the different parts of the body are all distinct and they move independently and please God seamlessly, because there is this almost spiritual way that the body is animated and we're describing the soul. And the Kabbalists, the mystics, and the Baal Shem Tov in particular say, let's try to imagine that the universe, in a sense, is also as the body, as we, our mind, our soul control the body, well, God controls, animates, and the energy courses through the universe. And this allows us to feel an incredible degree of closeness. realize that the world is full of divine energy, you say, wow, we're connected. And like Karen said, the world is all interconnected with this common fate. But here we're talking more than a common fate, a common energy and a common artist, a common uniting theme. One soul, one creator that bridges and connects not just everyone, but everything in our universe. And not to go off too far on a tangent, that's why Judaism is obsessed with a certain number. You know which number?
713.
1. Judaism is obsessed with the number 1. We say the Lord is God, the Lord is 1. Why are we so obsessed with the number 1? Because Judaism believes that the whole universe, in a sense, is a single body for a single soul. The whole world is a manifestation and an expression of one, of God. And that's why Judaism is so obsessed with the number 1. And that's why if you ever were in a synagogue, and pardon me for going off on a little bit of a tangent, if you've ever observed a person in prayer, and you'll notice they might put their hands on their eyes, and they'll say, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And you'll notice when they get to that last word, Echad, they'll take a little more time. They'll stretch out the word, and maybe they'll keep their hand on their eyes longer than you would imagine, because they're trying to meditate on this uniting, singular fact that the world and everything is interconnected in all the expression of one creator, one God. And you know what this could help us do? This could allow us to move into a place of deep, and I think you're getting at this, deep security and a sense of joy. You know why? No matter what is happening in life, we're not alone, we're not truly vulnerable, and we're not forgotten. So we don't need to be scared. We're not saying life is a smooth road. It is not. We're not alone for that bumpy road. And I want to tell you another story. The same Baal Shem Tov, I think there's a reason why the Baal Shem Tov was incredibly touched and taken by this message. Anyone know the story of the Baal Shem Tov? When he was a young boy, he was orphaned. His father passed away. And he was brought up essentially on his own. There was a lot of wandering. And he told the story that before he died, his father called him to his deathbed and says, my son, Israel, remember, God is always with you. And therefore, you should never have any fear. Never fear anyone but God, because you're never alone. He's always with you. And he said from that time, he was never afraid. Not because the road wasn't rocky, not because life wasn't miserable, and not because difficult things didn't happen, but because he wasn't alone for it. Alongside with him was his God, a God who's so great that he can create the whole universe and yet zoom in, focus, and pay attention to a single human being or even a single blade of grass. Another story. Anyone familiar with Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz? He passed away within the last year or so. A profound scholar. And he was also, you may not know this, a devout follower and student of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. And he one time went to visit the Rebbe, his teacher. And the Rebbe says, this was when the Rebbe was giving $1 for people to give to tzedakah. And the Rebbe says, where's your wife? Rabbi Steindl says, Rebbe, and it's this on a video, Rebbe, this time I'm traveling alone. The Rebbe says, alone? Yeah, I'm traveling alone. The Rebbe says, alone? The Rebbe says, no, you never travel alone. God is always alongside you. He's always with you. And so there's a certain stability, constant, that we can inculcate and cultivate through divine consciousness, meditation, when we figure that just as our soul fills our body, the Creator fills the universe. And that was step 1 of a 3-part discussion. God is everywhere, creates everything, and therefore, wherever we go, we're always right there next to him, alongside him. The meditation what we just said shifts our mindset to see the world differently, even if you're not thinking about it. Now, as a little intermission, I want to share with you a guided meditation by our favorite Rabbi Wolf of Australia, somewhat related to our topic. And then I want to continue with the next point, which we've already touched upon briefly, which is entitled By Design. Folks on Zoom, give me a thumbs up if the video is working. And if it's not, give me a thumbs down. Doctor?
Yeah, it's good.
Hold on. Now you tell me. You can hear too, right?
Yes.
Design underlies every aspect of creation. It's quite amazing that as you note the world, you find that everything possesses an element of design. Doctors, scientists, artists all point to the fact that design creates for them the pattern of what their work is all about. Underlying design is a designer. Keep that in mind. Lift your flower and observe it. Have a good look at it. Look at the petals. See the thin veins, the pattern inscribed. Beyond the petals, look deep within, and you might see the ovule, deeply embedded within, from which grows the stigma. Amazing, every flower with the same elements. Gently close your eyes and bring to mind that flower that you have in your hand. Become aware of its exquisite color, a shade that's difficult to verbalize. And remember, every flower is subtly different, designed subtly differently. Raise the flower to your nose. What is its scent? Its perfume? If you were to find a word to describe that scent, what would it be? Touch one of the petals. Press it lightly. Feel its texture. Soft. It may even be furry. Its unique texture. In your mind's eye, imagine a bee flying into the flower, looking for the pollen deep within, buzzing with satisfaction. Listen to that buzz. A flower is one of the most sensuous creations that God has made in the universe. You are that flower. You have a pattern, a unique pattern, a unique structure. You are a flower that God has created in His garden, in its garden, in her garden. Admire the you that possesses so many aspects of clear design, and design means purpose. You have been designed for your purpose. The world is a flower. The world possesses design. The world is purposeful. At all times, be aware, be mindful of the innate beauty and uniqueness of design in the world, in creation. And that way, relate to the designer and the purpose God has for you individually.
So beautiful introduction. An imaginary flower. Talk about design. Not only, and we really touched on this already, but I want to reemphasize, and not only in this traditional meditation do we realize that God's energy fills and is everywhere, creating that unity that links us and everything together. But it's also all done in an incredibly precise, conscious manner. So just like your soul is not only present in your action, but it is the actor behind your actions. Well, similarly, in the world, God consciously guides the energy that flows into this universe. And so everything that happens, as we discussed earlier, really can be described according to Jewish tradition as by the God's design. And this is pretty radical. This is a pretty big idea. To believe that everything that happens in this universe is not random, but guided and intentional. Text 9, page 91. We say this every day in prayers. He covers the earth with clouds, prepares rain for the earth, and causes mountains to sprout grass. He gives an animal its food, and the hungry ravens that call out. The psalmist, King David, describes how he imagines that nothing happens by chance. An animal has what to eat. A leaf blows in the wind. It's all highly, precisely by the divine design. You know, in life, we live through times where everything seems to not make sense. As a matter of fact, today, more and more, the world seems to not make sense. But sometimes in our past, we've had a moment, everything okay? Sometimes in our past, we've had events that don't seem to make sense. Things are plans that got messed up, or things that really don't make sense. But when the dust settled, we can point and say, wow, you know, it was for the best. I think of Mr. Doobie, a man who, I don't know if he's still around, but I remember he told me a few years ago, he's in Lamer. His name is Doobie, I think so. He was in Slovakia during World War II, and he was recruited into the army. He deserted and was thrown into a very, very uncomfortable, oppressive prison. A month later, all Jews were rounded up and sent to the camps. By being in prison, he ends up surviving. Was there a plan? Must be. I want to intentionally step over an important discussion, but it needs its own discussion, which is, where is God when things are bad, and how does God let really bad things happen? I want to step past that discussion now, although it warrants a lot of our attention, but we'll spend the next half hour on that important discussion. So I want to put that off to the side. But the point we're making here is that our world somehow, some way, although many times it doesn't make sense, is by a conscious guiding hand. In Hebrew, this is called hashgacha pratit, specific attention and design. And so nature can be described as a series of miracles of intentional, desired actions. You know what? This is very important because frequently we find ourselves aggravated, frustrated, or disappointed. A meeting, we're stood up in a meeting, a business deal that was a grand slam falls through. Our future isn't the way we mapped it out. Our 5-year plan, our 10-year plan, and 20-year plan has not actualized the way it must. We're angry that things didn't happen or people disappointed us, and everything seems to be going wrong. Well, this teaching can allow us to consider that maybe it happened the way it was supposed to happen. Unfortunately, what was supposed to happen doesn't always align with our dreams and hopes, and that's disappointing. But to know that there is intention and it was meant to happen that way can give us a strong degree of comfort and help us mitigate a lot of the stress in our lives. Is life going to be pain-free because we say, well, it was meant to happen? Absolutely not. Because this is not about removing pain. And this is not even about removing disappointment. But it is the ability to consider, if we're open to it, that maybe there was a wise, knowing creator who led us down the path we're currently on. Actually, this is an important meditation that has been counseled to folks experiencing great insecurity, doubt, and depression. I'm not talking about clinic depression. Of course, we should always seek out professional help when necessary, but disappointment in life, and this is an important meditation, text 10. Someone wrote that they're experiencing great doubt and disappointment. I'm just trying to paraphrase over here. Again, page 93. When a person has a feeling that arises that he is alone, and he can only rely on himself and his own judgment, and he needs to feel doubtful and insecure with each move he makes, while he also trusts in God, that trust is superficial, without permeating him and the way of his life in every detail. When a person's faith in God is deep, and he reflects that God's benevolent providence extends to each and every person, every detail, every minute, a person can develop profound security and confidence. This idea is described as hashgacha. So let's think about it this way. When we are the only captain of our ship, when we're in the driver's seat, that's daunting, scary, and full of doubts. Which way do we go? Which way do we turn? But if you realize that you're just a kid in that toy car, and your parent is pushing, if you know those toy red cars, and God is actually the one that's really pushing the car. Well, maybe we wish we could turn the wheel this way, but someone who cares and knows and already plotted out what's going to happen is doing it precisely so. Now comes Sharon's question, and Karen's question, where's our free choice? So I just want to repeat, the free choice is, now that God's taken us to this juncture where someone has said X or whatever deal happened or didn't happen, how are we going to respond? That's in our hands. That's where we have free choice. But what brings us to this point, that all very possibly is with divine predetermined choice to bring us where we are. So we think we're here in Florida because whatever. Well, maybe, just maybe, there's someone who knows best who brought us here, for better or for worse. We don't have to feel the stress because in many regards, we're not truly calling the shots. Where we do call the shots is what our next move is going to be, what our next word is going to be, what our next action is going to be, and what our next thought is going to be. That is entirely in our control. And so this could give us a lot of confidence, eliminate doubt and depression. So number one, and pain. Number one, God is like the soul. He's all over, unifying existence. Number two, it's by design. Beautiful design. Sometimes we fail to see the art. For example, unmet expectations or negative feelings. This poor girl's ice cream's on the floor. That's very upsetting. You can't help but feel for her. All of her ice cream fell out of her cone. And by the way, if your little child or niece or friend has their ice cream cone, you might not want to say, Hashem probably wanted your ice cream on the floor. But for us, sophisticated, mature adults that are embarking on a journey of Jewish meditation and itbonenut, you might want to consider how it's part of a divine master plan. And this can help us cultivate acceptance and resilience. Ira, go ahead.
Well, there's a little bit of production there because she's crying while the cone's still in her hand.
No. You have to notice, and the ice cream already fell out of her cone. She picked it up here.
Yeah,
But she's crying because this happened. Okay, these are just slides.
Wow.
But
That was amazing.
Ira, anyways.
You're right.
So it's a beautiful artist, conductor, the driver who knows how to drive better than us and who sees a bigger picture than we see, brought us here, and it could help us mitigate some of our pain, some of our disappointment, and some of the pressure and tension we feel, because if we're the only one alone in the world calling the shots, that's a miserable place to be. And so many of us feel like that's where we are. Which takes us to the third and final step of today's discussion, or ideas, proposals for some proposed meditative material. Point number 3. This is the most important point, in my opinion. Well, actually, let's catch up with this slide. Each moment. Yeah, hold on for a moment. The next point is that you matter. So far, we understand that there's a divine energy everywhere, and the world is by design, and our life is by design. It's not just a battery pack, but it's a soul that fills the world. And there's a lot of purpose and meaning and intention. And everything that happens is part of a godly master plan. It's a pretty radical idea. But I want you now to turn to page 98, where you can look at the screen. And what you see here is a picture. You see that picture? Well, here, you have a pixel. It's a different picture than what we have on the screen. But anyways, in the book, you'll see a picture of a tree, but it's very pixelated. And the idea is that every pixel in isolation is pretty hard to make sense of. When you see the full picture, you see the full art, this full painting, going back to painting, all of a sudden you see, wow, that little stroke and that little color and that little dot had to be there to create the big picture. Each pixel on its own is meaningless. And so that's what we're saying. We're in the art gallery, but our eye is straight up to the painting and all we see is the pixel. And so it doesn't make sense. When we zoom out, or when we trust the master artist, God, that he has the zoomed out picture, we can be assured that it makes sense. Every detail, every part of what happens to us, but now I'm saying more than that, everything that exists in this universe, including us, is part of God's masterpiece. And so if God chose to create us and put us here, it's because we matter. And what we do matters, just like everything matters. And so each moment is a gift, it's a stroke, and each place we're in is the opportunity to build out that beautiful picture and to respond to the purpose. And so what I'm trying to say, if everything in the world is for a purpose, well, then surely our existence is also for a purpose. And so perceiving the world as being full of a soul, God's animating energy with precise design and value allows us to feel close to God, allows us to appreciate the random and disappointing moments of life. And it also allows us to value ourselves. Sometimes we're disappointed in ourselves. Sometimes I meet people and they say, I was born, my existence is a mistake, and I don't contribute anything meaningful, and I'm worthless and I'm useless, and I'm just trying to survive till the end of this life. And this important Jewish teaching is trying to push back on that. You're not accidental. You're not insignificant. You're meaningful beyond our comprehension because we don't see the full picture. And I want to share with you another beautiful Hasidic teaching here. Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen, page 99. Just listen, this is a radical idea. You're going to be surprised that this was said by a rabbi and part of a Jewish tradition of mysticism and meditation. Just as we must believe in God, so we must believe subsequently in ourselves. You believe in God? If you believe in God, or you believe that you should believe in God, well, Judaism says you also need to believe in yourself. In other words, if you believe that God created the world and provides us with a mission, well, then our lives are not meaningless. Our souls are a gift from God, the source of life, and he's delighted and satisfied when we do what he wants from us. When we justify our existence by doing that which we were created for. So we are incredibly important, because in a picture, one pixel off is just a little problem in the picture. When we're talking about a divine, godly master plan, it's a whole lot more important. And God needs us, and we need to know that we're needed. And the payoff beyond reward is realizing that we matter. There are no mistakes. There are no accidents. Every step, every moment is an opportunity, which takes me to one of my favorite Hasidic Jewish teachings, page 100, text 13. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. We should pause here and give a prayer. Berditchev is in Ukraine, where lots of horrible things are in the news, and let's pray for the safety, protection, and well-being of all those innocent folks whose lives have been turned upside down. And now we're quoting Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, who says like this. Listen carefully. We're almost at the end of the train. 3 big ideas, but I want you to listen carefully. We should recognize and fully appreciate that our travels to different locations are not random. Each journey is specifically directed by God. The divine intention in orchestrating these journeys is that each individual has been allotted a specific portion in the material world. To spiritually rectify. Our portions are in specific locations to which we must journey. We accomplish these acts of rectification in a variety of ways, like studying Torah, praying. Everything okay? Or sleeping there for the sake of properly serving God, or for another means of performing God's will. The Baal Shem Tov associated this with a verse that says, God established the step of man, meaning a person who desires to relocate for a specific place is actually being inspired by God for the purpose of engaging in a specific divine service, thereby rectifying, fixing up, or contributing substantively to the area that they're in. Reminds me of a tale of a Jew of the shtetl. His job was, he was a Zegermacher. He was a watchmaker and a watch repairman. And one day, his shop just stops getting any business. And he needs to find another place to be employed, and he finds a faraway shtetl in the heartland of Russia. Very few Jewish people. This is a devout Jew who every day goes to the study hall, to the shul, and all of a sudden he's being sent far off into Russia, into a very, we went from Ukraine to Russia, you notice that? And he arrives there, and he sets up shop, and all of a sudden business is doing really well. And he goes to the shul, the synagogue, and he finds out that this is a small synagogue built by Cantonists. Cantonists were young Jewish children who were forcibly conscripted into the Tsar's army, compelled to, I think it was 25 years of very dangerous, backbreaking service without an opportunity to stay connected to their Yiddishkeit. Many of them were compelled to convert out. And after they finished their service, broken in body and spirit, they would band together and build these little communities. And he finds out that there's this little community here. He travels one day to his teacher, his Rebbe, and the rabbi says, "No, what's going on in town?" He says, "Business is amazing." He says, "No, and what about the Jewish community?" He says, "Well, you know, I pray and I read the Torah, but I don't have time to teach or engage or be involved in kindness to help them out because I'm so busy with my work." So the rabbi says, "1 second. You think God can't provide you parnasa in your old town? You think he could only provide you parnasa in this new town? Obviously, if you traveled all the way there, it's because you have the ability to uplift these people that are broken in body and spirit, to give them some material relief. and make them feel like they really matter. Make them feel like they belong yet to their community. And when you find the reason, the godly mission for why you're there, you'll find prosperity at the same time and the same place. And so not only is the entire world for a purpose, our existence is important, and where we end up is part of God's plan for us, which is why it's so wonderful that we have people here from Montreal and Chicago and Florida and everywhere else in between, and you choose to come study Torah in Florida. Probably God wants you to be here so we can get together and do something really important, meaningful, and deep at this moment. And so, in summation, dear friends, in summation, the body has a soul, the universe has a divine animating energy, which teaches us that this world is beautiful, pulsing with energy, with music, with colors. We have the ability to put on our glasses or plug in our earphones and hear the music and appreciate the unity, the one, the purpose in this existence. We have the ability to appreciate that every part of this world is not by random, but by design, which will allow us to value the people around us and the creations, the creatures, and the diversity within this world. And most importantly, it allows us to appreciate ourselves and the unique contribution that only we can make, where so important God himself chose to put us exactly where we are now. And God continues to cause things to happen in life that sends us around from place to place so that we could accomplish something great, wonderful, and divine. We need to remind ourselves along the way, we are important, we matter, and also we're never alone. We're not making our own independent decisions. Well, mostly, we're not making the decision of where to live or where to go. We have God holding our hand. He just expects us to make the right moral and spiritual decisions along the way. And he's just waiting to see and cheering us on. And all of this can be inferred, gleaned, and brought home with this idea. Our body's full of a soul. The world has a soul, a spirit, and it's God, the creator, the animator, the one who turns on the music and turns on the lights and spreads around the color, creates us and puts us precisely where we are now, because we're needed. We're important. We matter. We matter to God and to our fellow man. There's a lot of destiny and significance. By the way, next week we're going to come down from this high spiritual, very uber godly meditation, and we're going to talk a whole lot more about the Jewish concept of mindfulness, how to be present, and that's another important meditation for another day. For now, I want to thank you all for joining us for this journey across the universe and back to the place we're standing now, where we can find God, not just within, right where we are. My dear friends, thank you all for joining us. I hope you'll come back next week again for a discussion of mindfulness, presence. You don't want to miss this. And yeah, today was deep. Today was heavy. And I'm here for any questions or comments or disagreements that you'd like to share. I welcome that.